Hello, hello. Welcome back to Whole Lotta Heart. I'm your host, Kayla, and today we're stepping into one of the most tender parts of grieving, the year of firsts. That first birthday without them, the first Christmas, the first Mother's Day, the first time you didn't call them just to say, I made it home safe. It's not just, one big loss. It's 1,000 tiny ones wrapped up in days that used to feel just normal, and that sometimes you feel like you took those for granted. So if you ever feel like you're just bracing for the calendar days to just roll by, this episode is for you. And you're not being dramatic here. These days feel heavy because your love for them was real. So let's talk about what this year looks like. It's the weird, the overwhelming, the sacred, and everything in between. So, what is the year first, even? The year first is that first full year after someone you loved has passed on, and suddenly everything becomes a new experience without them. It's a year full of first times that you didn't ask for. It's the first birthday of yours without their phone call. It's the first holiday without their laugh in the room. Or the first even just normal day that suddenly just feels not so normal at all because they're not there. And even though time does keep going forward, as we talked about before, you will oftentimes, especially during this time of the year, feel like, or this time during this first year first, you will feel like you're trying to catch your breath from the day that everything changed, the day that everything happened. And the thing that no one tells you is that grief doesn't hit you just all at once. I think I've told you that it's not linear and you'll go through it in stages. It keeps showing up. And one of the reasons that that happens is because it shows up in traditions. It shows up in songs, in smells, in Facebook memories, grocery store runs, everywhere. It happens everywhere. Places where you wouldn't even think it would show up. It just hits you like a wave. So I want to talk about the big days first. The ones that are circled on the calendar that suddenly feel like they're going to be impossible or difficult to navigate now. Their birthday. Maybe you used to make a big deal out of it, or maybe they did. And now you wake up wondering what you're supposed to do. Like, do you celebrate it? Do you ignore it? Do you make a social media post? Do you stay offline? I know for me, the first birthday of my mom's, without her, she was a St. Patrick's Day baby, so March 17th. It was a tough one. And I remember because I had just started working in undergraduate admissions for a local university, and I was traveling that day. And I was traveling home from Long Island, actually. That's where I was doing my recruitment at the time. And I was coming home, and it was her birthday. And I was actually very grateful that I was traveling that day because it took my mind off of her birthday, or off of being sad for her birthday, because I had work to do and then I had to hit the road to travel. But when I got home from that travel day, my best friend took me out to dinner. I think my sister was working or something that night. My best friend took me out to dinner, and we went to Olive Garden because that's a place that my mom and I would go often randomly. So we went there, we bought a bottle of wine, and we just had a good night just talking about my mom and all the memories and what we would have been doing. And it was, although it was a sad day because she wasn't here and I was out with my best friend instead of her, it was really great to celebrate her still in that way, because that's what she would want us to do. Now, my sister and I, we have sort of this tradition where after work, my sister comes over to my place and we either order something for dinner or my sister will cook and we'll have dinner together. And then we'll watch my mom's favorite movie, which is Joanna Man. She loved that movie, and my mom loved comedies, so she would be cracking up at that movie. And we just watched that in honor of her, and we laugh at all the parts that she would have laughed at and repeated and mocked. And it's just really fun, and it's a nice celebration of her life in a new way with us together. But let me just say this. This is just what I have done to celebrate my mom's birthday. But whatever you do, there's no right way. Don't let anyone influence you or say what you should be doing just because I decided to, go out and celebrate in this way doesn't mean you have to do that. If you want to sit at home and just think about the memories and just be with yourself, that's totally valid. And it's totally still a celebration and an acknowledgement of them and, just them not being here for the day, Lighting a candle is enough. I know sometimes I do that even just throughout the year. It doesn't have to necessarily be a special day for me to do that. Crying is enough. Doing nothing is enough to acknowledge and to celebrate them on their birthday. Then there's your birthday. And for me, this one kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting my own birthday to feel so sad. And I think my first birthday in that year first, so heading into the, wrapping up the year, because my mom passed in August, my birthday's in July. It was a happy day. I don't remember exactly what I did, but I remember being happy. But I also remember coming home and being sad because I realized that I took for granted the birthday, 2 birthdays prior to that. So not 2021 when she passed, but the birthday in 2020. Because the birthday in 2021 when she was in the hospital, we had just found out that her cancer had spread and she really wasn't herself mentally. She knew who I was, but she didn't know who I was. So we couldn't celebrate my birthday like we normally would. She would normally have a cake for me and like balloons. And I have to say my dad stepped right on in and he brought me balloons and cards and all that stuff on my birthday because he knew that's something my mom would want. And he made the day special. My friends made the day special. They made me leave the hospital and go out to dinner. But the birthday wrapping up the year in 2022 was just me realizing that I took for granted that COVID birthday that we had when we were just together. It was just us and the family at the house. And I think that it's hard because you never know when that last birthday is going to be. Like, I didn't know that would have been my last birthday with her in July of 2020. The last birthday with her actually mentally present and able to celebrate me and hype me up in the way that she did. So it was hard for me to process that. Yeah, it was very tough. It's tough because when someone you love was always there to celebrate you and now they're not, and you had no control over this, it's not like they're just out of town or something. It leaves a weird aching, like a heartache. And even though my friend showed up, my dad showed up, my sister, my aunt, everybody, we circled around each other during this year first, but the day just doesn't feel complete because your person is missing. Does that make sense? And then holidays, those are another type of beast, okay? The first Thanksgiving, the first Christmas, these are the first times that your family is trying to act like things are back to normal, and it's not. You have a good time, but in the end or throughout the day, at least for me, when there was quiet time, I would have these moments like, oh, I wish mommy was here, or oh, I wish she was here to cook this, or oh, she would have laughed so hard at this. I had a lot of those moments throughout the day during those first holidays. Sometimes, you sit at the table and you have dinner and you pretend that everything is okay and you have a good time with your family, but you're not necessarily okay. Sometimes you want to skip the table altogether and just not even eat together, not even do the thing. Sometimes, you might laugh through the tears because what else can you do? And, you're having happy memories, but they're also sad because you can no longer make any more. And then don't even get me started on the death anniversary. That first one, it was a doozy for me a little bit. I think I processed more of this by myself. But I remember the first one, I took off the day from work just because I didn't know how I was going to be mentally, emotionally. And I'm very grateful that I had a supervisor who understood what it was like to lose a parent and was like, do what you gotta do. But I took the day off, and luckily, gratefully, I was in happy spirits. And I remember my mom loved Rachel's. For those of you who don't know what Rachel's is like a Mediterranean Greek place. So you can get like chicken souvlaki or chicken shawarma in like a bowl type of thing. It's like a Chipotle where you can choose what you put into it. She loved Rachel's, and we would go there all the time. So since I was off from work, I picked up Rachel's for me and my sister for lunch, and we went and had lunch. We just sat outside in the hatch of my car because it was August. It was a nice day, and we had lunch together. And it didn't seem sad at all. It was very much just remembering her and being together for that time. But it wasn't the day that was rough for me. It was the lead up to it, because it's like your body can sense when these dates are coming around, and things just start to come back to memory and smell familiar. The weather, it was August, so it was nice outside. The smell of the air, and then you have memories of when you got the news and the last moment that you had with them. It just all starts to come back. And I know that for me, that felt like having knots in my stomach the days leading up into it. Whenever I would write the date on something at work, it will remind me, oh, it's coming up 4 more days. Oh, it's coming up 3 more days. Even the month before, when I hit July, once we hit July, I was a little bit nauseous and knots in my stomach and I was just feeling unsettled because we rushed her to the hospital in July. I had my first birthday without her in July. And then all the things that happened, you just start to replay in your head. And it was that first day that it was just the anticipation of it that was more damaging or more emotional than the actual day. But it's because you're not just remembering the loss, like it's like you're reliving it. Your body, I don't know why our minds do this to us, but it starts in the mind and it affects the body. You start to have these thoughts and you start to think about what happened, what went down, the series of events. I can tell you everything I was wearing in these weeks. Like I can tell you what my schedule was, what I was doing, everything up until this date. And I relived it in my head, and my body just sort of went back to that. I was anxious every day because I just didn't know what was going to happen with her situation. And my body took that on that first year going into the death anniversary. Oh, so the year of first, it's emotionally draining. It's people who haven't experienced a loss this heavy. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm sniffling in the microphone. But people who haven't experienced a loss this heavy don't understand that once the service is over, you lay your person to rest, and the service happens and that's over. They don't realize the emotional part that you now have to deal with going forward. They don't, because they're not dealing with it. And sometimes we deal with it alone in some cases. And then, those are the more obvious year of firsts that we experience: holidays, birthdays, right? But we have the sneaky firsts that happen too, and they're very quiet, and they They don't show up on a calendar, so you don't know when they're going to happen, but they hit just as hard. So for me, this looked like the first time you went to the grocery store and you automatically reached for their favorite snack. In my case, the first time I went to Wegmans after my mom's passing, I went down the aisle to get maraschino cherries because she loved maraschino cherries. She would just eat them out the jar. And it became to the point where I knew rather, if I'm going to Wegmans, just grab her a jar. She's going to want them. She's going to eat them. Even if she doesn't want them today, she'll eat them in the next couple of days. Just grab them. And I remember I walked down the aisle and I grabbed them, put them in the cart, and was like, Kayla, you don't need these. Who's going to eat these? And I just stood there in the Wegmans like, oh, snap. And I slowly put them back. But my mind was processing like, she's not here. And it was a very weird sensation, a very weird feeling took over my mind. I immediately started to sweat and anxiety started to like turn my stomach in that moment because I had that realization. And I wasn't ready for that realization, but it came to me. Or the first time that you go to a family event and you realize that you don't know who you are without them next to you, and how much of a comfort they provided to you. At least in my case for my mom, if there was someplace I didn't want to go by myself, or she invited me somewhere where she was doing something with her friends, I knew that I had her to lean on. She was sort of like my crutch in that sense, where I knew that she was there and she had my back. She would get me out of conversations I didn't want to have. And, she'll come to your rescue. That was what your mom did. That was what my mom did. And now that she's gone, I realized I had to figure out who I was and how to navigate certain situations without her. Situations that she would normally just be like, this is what we're going to do. And that's hard. That's hard. And you don't realize how much that person does for you and supports you until they're not here, and you have to figure it out on your own. Or the first time, that you really laugh, like have a stomach hurting, gut clenching laugh, and then you feel guilty about it because what? Like, did I just feel joy for the first time since she left? It's tough. Or even, I'm sorry, I have all these examples, but even the first time that you make it through a day without crying. I remember my first day that I had without crying, and I felt so bad that it made me cry. It made me feel like I was slowly losing my memory of her or that, maybe I didn't love her as much as I thought I did because I'm okay right now. It felt really wrong to be okay, to not cry, to be able to make it through the day or a conversation and talk about her without crying. It felt very weird. And no one talks about these things, and these moments are small, but they matter. And when you have them, they can literally knock the wind out of you. When I was in that Wegmans with the maraschino cherries, I just stood there. I know the people walking past me were like, is this girl okay? Because I was just standing there holding the jar of maraschino cherries because my mind was processing that I didn't need these for my mom anymore. And I wasn't going to eat them. I do not like maraschino cherries. But she did. And it hit like a ton of bricks. I'll tell you that. And, that just sort of brings back my point from episode 2 that's the thing about grief. It sneaks in the quiet, in the in-between stages. It's not linear. It can hit you, when you're not even thinking about it. The most random of things, the most random of times, those planned holidays and birthdays, and then things in between. It just hits you Grief is a lifelong guest. She has no intentions on ever leaving. So, how do we move through this year first without losing ourselves in the weight of it all? And I'll just share with you what's helped me, and maybe it might help you too. So, the first thing, and these are things that I learned after the year first. I didn't know these things going into the year. So I learned these in my journey. Number one, expect the feelings. Anticipate the feelings. Anticipate all the feelings. Be prepared for the emotional, negative, sad, anxious emotions, but also prepare for the happy ones where you want to celebrate and you want to, honor them in happy ways. Prepare for all those things, because when the first days come around, you don't know what you're going to expect. You don't know if memories are going to flood your mind. You don't know if you're going to be anxious and sad. So just prepare for all of them. And when they hit, whichever one they are, let them in. You're not crazy if you're still crying. This is your first year without them. You're not crazy for not crying. And grief doesn't look the same every day. And there's no right or wrong way to feel. So whatever you feel, just let the feelings play out. Create soft, I guess maybe like rituals. I don't know. Maybe new traditions. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but it could be something as small as lighting a candle on Christmas Day, making their favorite meal on their birthday. Maybe you just want to talk to them and you write them a letter. You listen to one of their favorite playlists, whatever makes you feel close to them. But it's important to note, though, that rituals don't fix the pain. They just give you somewhere to put it. It gives you somewhere to channel that energy that allows you to feel close to them, but still release the emotions behind it. Let people in if you can. I must say, I have an amazing village of friends that were also very close to my mom. And they anticipated these days just as much as I did. And they may not have been as sad as I was, obviously, because it was my mom. But they knew how it was going to affect me. And they would send me a text either the day before or the day of, like, hey, I know what tomorrow is. I'm here if you need me. Or I know what tomorrow is. I'm going to call you at this time. Hey, I know it's mom's birthday. We're going out to dinner tonight. Those types of things. And I'm very grateful that I had them there because I didn't have to be strong, even though it was hard for me because I felt guilty sometimes being sad, because you just don't want to burden your friends with your sadness when they have great things happening to them, right? But they knew, they were like, listen, you don't have to be strong with us. You let loose and you release whenever you need to. And I'm very grateful for that. So I recommend sending the text to your friends a couple days ahead, the day before, something like that, and just say, hey, mom's birthday is coming up. I don't know if I'm going to be okay. Check in on me. Or, Christmas is tomorrow. Check on me. Can I stop by so I'm not alone? Those types of things. And your friends will not mind. They'll support you in any way. And you don't need to have a crowd of friends either. You don't have to, bring the whole gang out. But just one person to hold space for you in that time is enough. And it's amazing to feel that support at that time. Give yourself permission to do less. Now, this year first, we're speaking more like the big dates, like birthdays and holidays and things like that. Give yourself permission to not have to engage in all the things. You're going to see people posting their decorations, all their parties and their social events. If you don't have the capacity to do that, don't force yourself, because that will make things worse. And that's not what your grieving journey and your healing is supposed to be about. You don't have to show up for everything. You don't have to decorate. You don't have to pretend. I remember maybe 2 Christmases into losing my mom, my sister and I were talking about, putting up our Christmas decorations. And for me, that made me feel close to my mom because that's something that we do together. Well, that's something that I do. And she'd watch and supervise me put the Christmas tree up. But my sister chose not to put up a tree. And I was like, why don't you put up a tree? It would make you feel better. But for her, that would not make her feel better. She wasn't in that type of spirit at the time. And, I feel bad because I was pressuring her, but I admire that she was like, no, I don't want to put up a tree. This is not where I'm at. And you don't have to be there just because someone else is there. Do what brings you peace and what honors your person your way. Celebrate them in your own way. Some people like to do memorial dinners. Some people go for hikes or light fireworks or do things that, their person loved to do. Whatever brings you close to their memory, do that. So like I said, for me and my sister, for my mom's birthday, we're going to have dinner and watch Joanna Man. And we're going to do that every year, unless we decide to switch something up. But that's what our plans always are. So do whatever brings them close to you. My sister likes to cook dinner because now she feels like she is the matriarch of the family. And that makes her feel close to my mom. So do whatever brings you peace and whatever soothes your spirit in relation to your loved one. And if all you can do is breathe through the day, that's okay too. That is totally fine. If you just want to sit on the couch, wrapped up in a blanket, grab yourself a little coffee and, think about your loved one, do that. That is totally acceptable. It's totally fine. But now I want to talk about what happens when you survive that year first. Does it magically get easier? So you go through that first year, you go through those 365 days. What happens on day 366? Is it easier now? Not exactly. I mean, you'll probably hear people say, it gets better. It gets better with time. Time heals. And yeah, sometimes it does get better with time. But sometimes the second year can also be lonely because after that first year, the world stops checking in, People assume that you're okay now and not intentionally. They're not intentionally not checking in on you, but you've gone through 365 days. Life is moving on very quickly, but grief doesn't disappear. It just softens a little bit and it settles itself in. And yes, it comes to you in waves, but sometimes the waves, they lessen in their intensity throughout the years. And you learn how to carry it and you build a life around the ache. Remember in episode 3, I said grief doesn't shrink. We just grow around it. Same concept. We learn how to process the grief and we become bigger than the grief, even though it's still going to be a little piece there. And you stop expecting to be the same person you are. You stop expecting to have the same experience on your big days that you had before. You expect them to be different now. And you start learning who you are now. And that's a quiet kind of strength, So there's other firsts also that I want to talk about. And those are the first that you'll experience that they're not here. And you can't necessarily prepare for these because you never experienced them. So for instance, I think about things that will happen in my life, like when I get married. Mom's not going to be there sitting on the first row, And, I just think about I'm not engaged or anything, so this is not happening soon. But I do think about how me and my significant other will have to think of creative ways to honor her now instead of just having her there. Or the first time I have my baby, when I have a baby for the first time, my mom's not going to be there to experience it. She's not going to be there to hold my baby and to be, the BB that she was to my nephew. That's what my nephew called her, BB. And those things, sometimes you don't think about them in the year first because they're not necessarily happening. But, these things show up a little bit later on. And, I think about that for myself because I'll be 31 this year. Hopefully I'll be married soon, and those are things that I want to share with her that we've talked about, like, oh, this is what I want to do for my wedding. This is what I want to do for this. And she's talked about things that she'd want to do for me for like my, bridal shower and all that. But now it's just the reality that these things aren't, they aren't going to be a reality ever. They'll look very different than what we both had planned. And we're still going to honor her. She's still going to be in the picture. She's still going to be in the picture. But it's just going to be different. Different than what we expected, different than what we wanted. So that's just something that you have to come to terms with and learn how to navigate. And again, learn how to honor them in your way, in a way that brings peace and bring their memory close to you. So if you're listening to this and you're smack in the middle of your year of firsts, I want you to know this. And it's going to sound very cliche, and you probably have heard this from multiple people, but you are doing better than you think you are. You are showing up for yourself, and you're loving them in your own way. Just you press and play on this episode is you showing up for yourself. And I want you to remember that you are allowed to cry, to cancel plans, to rage clean, nap throughout the day, drink all the coffee you want, make new traditions for yourself, or you can do absolutely nothing, because grief doesn't follow any rules. Healing doesn't have any timelines, and neither should you. You shouldn't limit yourself. You shouldn't put yourself in the box for your healing journey. And what matters is that you're honoring your heart. And your heart is the one that's learning how to keep beating when a piece of it is missing. So honor the feelings that come out of that. Honor the actions that come out of that. And again, if all you did was listen to this episode and just breathe, that's enough. So if this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who might be in their year of first too, because none of us should really have to go through this alone. It's better when you have a community of people rallying behind you. You can follow the show on Instagram at Whole Lotta Heart Pod. And if you haven't already, hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening so you don't have to miss another episode. And if Whole Lotta Heart has been helping you feel seen, I encourage you to leave a review. It helps other grieving hearts find this space too. So take care of your heart, especially on the hard days. The first may break you open, but they also just reiterate to you how deeply your love really goes. And you're not doing this alone. You have me here in your corner, and you're doing it with a whole lot of heart. Talk to you next week.